1975. The year disco was learning to walk, soul was still king, and funk had something to prove. It was a year that gave us songs so perfect, so packed with feeling, that some of them should have launched careers lasting decades. But for some of these artists, lightning only struck once. And for others, one song captured a moment in American music so magical that everything they did after it just couldn't compete. These are 15 songs from 1975 that you still remember, even if you forgot who made them. 1. Minnie Riperton, Lovin' You. Imagine a lullaby so pure that Stevie Wonder himself couldn't resist getting involved. That's exactly what happened with Minnie Riperton's Lovin' You.
My life so beautiful, and every day of
The melody started as something Minnie and her husband Richard Rudolph sang to calm their baby daughter to sleep. That baby was Maya Rudolph. Yes, the Saturday Night Live legend. And if you listen close to the very end of the song, you can still hear Minnie whispering her name.
because you're beautiful, and every day of
Stevie Wonder was under contract with Motown, which meant he couldn't legally produce for another label. So he credited himself as El Toro Negro, Black Bull in Spanish, a nod to his Taurus star sign, just so he could secretly co-produce the track for Epic Records. The man wanted in on this song that badly.
la 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 la, doo doo doo.
And he was right to hustle. You Lovin' You hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April 1975, with just Minnie's voice, acoustic guitar, a soft keyboard, and birdsong. No drums, no bass. It is regarded as one of the first #1 hits
Is all I wanna do.
in chart history recorded without a percussion instrument. Minnie Riperton had a 5-octave range that let her glide into the whistle register, a place most singers can't even dream of reaching. But behind the beauty of this song was a painful truth. By 1976, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She kept singing, she kept touring. She became a national spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. Minnie Riperton died in July 1979. She was only 31 years old. Her daughter Maya was 7. But Lovin' You never stopped playing, and it never will. It is perhaps the most tender moment in all of soul music history.
La 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 la, doo doo doo.
2. La Belle, Lady Marmalade. 3. Black women. Space-age costumes. A French phrase that would teach an entire generation something they definitely did not learn in school. Lady Marmalade was recorded in New Orleans with the legendary producer Alan Toussaint, and it hit #1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart in the spring of 1975. It was bold, brash, and unlike anything else on the radio that year. Here's the detail that nobody talks about.
But when he turned off the street, all memories keep.
Patti LaBelle, the woman singing that famous French chorus, had no idea what she was saying. She later told journalists she didn't know the phrase meant anything suggestive until she asked songwriter Bob Crewe directly. Her response, quote, "What will my mother think?" The song replaced another Crewe composition, Frankie Valli's My Eyes Adored You, at the #1 spot. That made Crewe and co-writer Kenny Nolan only the 3rd songwriting team in Billboard history to knock themselves out of the top position, after Lennon-McCartney and Holland Dozier Holland. LaBelle never replicated the commercial explosion of this song. By the end of 1976, creative tensions pulled the trio apart, and they went solo. But for this particular moment in time, as a group called Label, Lady Marmalade stands alone. Inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, preserved by the Library of Congress. A song that changed what black women could do on a pop stage. 3. Silver Convention, Fly Robin. Fly 6 words. That's all this song has. 6 words. and it hit #1 in America. Fly, Robin, fly. Up, up to the sky. That is the entire lyric. And somehow, Silver Convention, a German studio group whose members couldn't speak a word of English, created one of the most irresistible disco anthems of 1975 with those 6 words alone. Producer Michael Kunze and musician Sylvester Levay had been visiting disco clubs in Munich, Germany, and wanted to create a dance hit. They booked a group of anonymous studio vocalists and stripped the song down to a pulsating bass line and barely their lyrics, because the singers couldn't pronounce English anyway. The original title was Run, Rabbit, Run. But 30 minutes before the session, Levay heard a different song on Armed Forces radio with a similar title and panicked. So they changed it to Fly, Robin, Fly. Literally right before the girls walked in the door. The track shot to the top of the Hot 100. The R&B chart, and the disco chart. It was the first song by a German pop group to reach #1 in the United States. And it won the 1976 Grammy Award for Best R&B Instrumental Performance, a prize that shocked the American soul community. Who weren't expecting a group of German studio musicians to walk away with that trophy. Silver Convention never came close to replicating this global conquest. Their follow-up Get Up and Boogie charted in 1976, but by the end of the decade, the group was gone. 6 words, 1 Grammy, 1 #1 hit, and a place in music history that nobody saw coming from Munich. 4. Natalie Cole. This Will Be an Everlasting Love. She was the daughter of the great Nat King Cole. She had his name, his talent, his charm, and nobody wanted to sign her.
So glad that you rectified my mind. This will be.
Record label after record label turned Natalie Cole down through the early 1970s. She had tried to carve her own path in soul and R&B, deliberately refusing to record jazz material so nobody could accuse her of riding her late father's legacy. But the doors stayed closed. Until 2 songwriters from Chicago, Chuck Jackson and Marvin Yancey, heard her at a nightclub and fought to get her signed to Capitol Records. This Will Be was written almost accidentally, at the very end of a session, just as Natalie and her team were about to leave town. Capitol Records was so convinced it was a hit, they made it her debut single. They were right. Say it shot to #1 on the R&B chart in the summer of 1975. The song won her the Grammy Award for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance, ending an 8-year winning streak by Aretha Franklin. The award had practically been nicknamed the Aretha Award because Franklin had won it so many consecutive times. Natalie also won Best New Artist, the first African-American artist ever to receive that honor from the Recording Academy. Behind the scenes, Natalie was battling addiction. Demons that would nearly destroy her before she found recovery in 1983. But in 1975, for One Bright Summer, she was the undeniable new queen of R&B, a debut single that broke records, a voice that made the world stop. 5. People's Choice. Do It Any Way You Wanna. It took Frank Brunson 15 years and 17 failed records to finally get a hit. But when it arrived, it arrived. People's Choice was a Philadelphia funk band that had been grinding since the early 1960s. By 1975, they were signed to Philadelphia International Records, home to the Sound of Philadelphia, where Leon Huff of the legendary Gamble and Huff production duo took a special interest in them. Huff made an unusual call. He let the self-contained band play their own instruments in the studio, bypassing the iconic MFSB session players who appeared on nearly every Philly international record. The result was Do It Any Way You Wanna. A heavy, relentless funk groove that hit #1 on the R&B chart and sold over 1 million copies in just 3 months. It was also mixed by Tom Moulton, the Visionary Club DJ, who would later help define the language of 12-inch dance remixes. This track was one of the early templates for what those remixes would eventually become. The song later formed the backbone of Dillinger's 1977 reggae hit Cocaine in My Brain and was sampled years later by rapper Guru. Its groove proved timeless. But for People's Choice, nothing ever matched that moment. Frank Brunson died in 2007. His one perfect hit still bangs like it did 50 years ago. 6. Crown Heights Affair. Dreaming a Dream. They named themselves after a neighborhood in Brooklyn. And in 1975, they made that neighborhood famous. Crown Heights Affair was an 8-piece funk band born out of Brooklyn's vibrant local music scene in 1967. For years, they were a staple of New York's R&B underground, playing clubs, building their sound, going through lineup changes and label problems. Their early records on RCA didn't click. But when they moved to D-Light Records, the same label that housed Kool and the Gang, everything changed. Dreaming a Dream hit #1 on the Billboard Dance Chart in 1975, while also cracking the R&B Top 5. The track was recorded at Media Sound Studio in New York and featured thick-layered horn sections, Moog synthesizer, and clavinet stabs that would define the Brooklyn-to-disco sound of the mid-70s. Disco historians now credit this record, alongside a handful of others from that era, as one of the genre's foundational blueprints. Crown Heights Affair stayed musically active into the 1980s, building a loyal following in the United Kingdom, where they charted again in 1978 and 1980. But in America, Dreaming a Dream remained their crowning achievement. Their horns have been sampled by hip-hop producers for decades, and yet the full story of this Brooklyn collective remains largely untold. Until now. 7. South Shore Commission. Free Man. Before there was a 12-inch single as we know it today, before that extended format existed as an industry standard, there was a test pressing of Free Man by the South Shore Commission. Engineer Tom Moulton and his colleague Jose Rodriguez cut an acetate of Free Man onto a 10-inch disc and handed it out to select DJs in New York City clubs. Not to sell it, but to test how crowds would react to hearing the same groove stretched out over 5 full minutes. The bass made the floor shake. The response was unanimous. That experiment became the prototype for what we now call the disco remix. The South Shore Commission itself had a long and complicated history. Formed originally in the early 1960s in Washington, D.C., they had recorded for Atlantic, played backup for other acts, and spent years on the road without a real breakthrough. Free Man, written and produced by legendary Philly soul architect Bunny Sigler, was their arrival. #1 on the dance chart, top 10 on R&B, a Paradise Garage anthem. And then, like so many 1975 stories, the heat faded. Their follow-up singles charted modestly, but nothing recaptured the euphoria of Free Man. Their one album, produced entirely at Sigma Sound in Philadelphia, remains a collector's gem. Its cover barely recognizable today, its groove absolutely undeniable.
I'm a free man and bragging about it. Free man. Are you free?
8. Gary Tom's Empire. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blow your whistle, count it down. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then the whistle drops. Gary Tom's Empire was a 9-piece disco-funk ensemble based in New York. Keyboards, horns, vocalist Helen Jacobs, the full package. Their debut single was this big, bold Countdown to the Drop groove, recorded at Ultrasonic Recording Studios in Hempstead, New York. And released on the PIP label in the early summer of 1975. It hit number 5 on the R&B chart, an extraordinary debut for a band that was essentially unknown weeks before the single dropped. On the New York club circuit, the track was a monster. The countdown format, almost cinematic in its build, was designed for dance floors, and it worked perfectly. DJs loved it. Dancers loved it. And for a brief shining summer, Gary Tom's Empire was the hottest name in the New York disco underground. Their follow-up single, a cover of the Beatles' Drive My Car, reached the R&B Top 40, proving they had more than one idea. But the commercial momentum never fully materialized, and by the end of the decade, the empire had quietly dissolved. Today, this track is a staple in rare groove DJ sets worldwide. Its countdown intro still guaranteed to get a room moving. Some debut singles age. This one has only gotten better. 9. Brass Construction. Moving 8 minutes and 39 seconds of pure, chanting, rolling, unstoppable groove. And it started by accident. Brass Construction was a 9-piece funk collective from Brooklyn, built around the vision of Randy Muller, a multi-instrumentalist, arranger, and producer who had been shaping the group's sound since the late 1960s. When they finally got into the studio to record their debut album in 1975, Movin' came together from a spontaneous jam. Bassist Wade Williamson laid down a riff. Muller started calling out cues to drummer Larry Payton. The tape rolled for 16 straight minutes before anyone stopped. Muller wrote the horn parts afterward as overdubs. The result was a song that topped the R&B chart, topped the disco chart, and went platinum. Blues and Soul magazine called the debut album, in a contemporary review, the funk album of all time. Critics noted that Movin' was one of the last great dance jams to be built on rhythm instruments alone. The synthesizers were layered on top of the groove rather than inside it, a distinction that would become significant as disco evolved. Brass Construction continued to release music into the mid-1980s, building a devoted following in the UK. But Movin' stands apart, sampled in over 200 songs across hip-hop, house, and beyond. Who Sampled lists it as one of the most sampled funk recordings of the entire decade. Nothing Randy Muller ever touched moved quite like this. 10. The Blackbyrds. Walking in Rhythm. A jazz musician, his college students, and one of the most hypnotic walking bassline grooves in soul history. Donald Byrd was a legendary jazz trumpeter at Howard University. In the early 1970s, he assembled the Blackbyrds from members of his own music students. Young, hungry musicians studying at one of America's most prestigious, historically black universities. He signed them to Fantasy Records, produced their debut, and set out to prove that jazz and funk could fuse into something that would sell on AM radio. Walking in Rhythm was their breakthrough, a rolling, effortless groove built on an infectious bass pattern, mellow electric piano, and vocals so cool they practically floated.
Get back home.
It reached number 6 on the R&B chart in 1975, making it one of the year's most perfect crossover moments. Jazz purists complained that Bird was selling out. Radio loved it. Dance floors loved it. The students who played it became professionals because of it.
I'm tired and so all alone.
The Blackbyrds kept recording through the late 1970s, earning a devoted cult following. But Walking in Rhythm was the moment that defined them. It later became a hip-hop sampling staple, its bass line appearing in dozens of classic records across the following decades. Howard University gave the world jazz legends for generations. In 1975, it also gave the world this.
On into the music.
11. Ohio Players. Fire. The album cover was a woman on fire. The song was a woman on fire. And the band playing it was absolutely on fire. The Ohio Players were a Dayton, Ohio funk collective who had been working since the early 1960s under various names, always grinding, always evolving. By 1974, they had signed with Mercury Records and crafted a sound that was part James Brown, part psychedelic soul, and entirely themselves. Their album Fire arrived in late 1974, and the title track hit number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts by early 1975, anchoring itself as one of the defining smashes of the year. Fire is a masterclass in tension and release. The guitar riff that opens the song sounds like a slow-burning fuse. The horns hit like an explosion. And Billy Beck's organ locks into a groove so tight it could cut glass. The band played every note live. No samples, no click tracks, no studio tricks. Just 7 musicians locked into one of the tightest arrangements in funk history. The Ohio Players followed Fire with Love Roller Coaster, another number 1, and a string of R&B chart entries. But Fire was the song that turned them from cult favorites into household names. It earned them a gold record, sold over 1 million copies, and remains a definitive statement of what 1975 funk sounded like. Raw, hot, unstoppable. 12. Average White Band. Pick Up the Pieces. They were Scottish. They were white. They played funk. And America absolutely lost its mind over them. The Average White Band, AWB, were a group of Scottish musicians so obsessed with American soul and R&B that they moved to the United States and played the music with a level of authenticity that baffled everyone who heard them for the first time. Pick Up the Pieces was a horn-driven instrumental groove. No lyrics, just 2 words repeated in the chorus. And it sat at number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts simultaneously in early 1975. The song was originally written as a B-side. The band's producer thought the A-side was stronger. Radio programmers disagreed. They started playing Pick Up the Pieces instead. And within weeks, it had become one of the biggest records in America. USA B-side became a number 1 hit on the strength of its groove alone. The AWB story carries one devastating footnote. During the exact period Pick Up the Pieces was climbing the charts, the band's drummer Robbie McIntosh died of a drug overdose at a party in Los Angeles. He never got to witness the full scale of what they had created together. The remaining members pushed on. They kept charting through the late 70s. But nothing reached the heights of that one perfect, wordless groove that crossed the Atlantic and conquered America. 13. Lonnie Liston Smith, Expansions. Some songs don't need a #1 chart position to become timeless. Some songs become timeless because they tell the truth in a language nobody else was speaking yet. Lonnie Liston Smith was a classically trained pianist and composer who had worked with jazz giants including Pharoah Sanders and Miles Davis. In 1975, he released Expansions, a track that floated somewhere between spiritual jazz, cosmic soul, and something that had no name yet. The piano cascades. The flute sighs. A gentle chorus sings of peace, of higher consciousness, of the possibility that music itself could be a form of prayer. Expansions charted modestly on the R&B survey, but its influence traveled far beyond any chart position. In the 1980s and 1990s, hip-hop producers discovered it and made it a foundation of the genre's spiritual and introspective wing. A tribe called Quest, Guru, and a generation of producers who understood that funk could carry meaning-sampled and interpolated Smith's work for decades. Lonnie Liston. Smith never crossed into mainstream pop stardom. He didn't need to. Expansions is one of those rare records that seems to belong to whoever discovers it. Young or old, in 1975 or today. Play it once and something in the room changes. That's not a hit, that's a gift. And in 1975, while the world was dancing, Lonnie Liston Smith was building cathedrals. 14. BT Express. Do it, till you're satisfied. Before the song even had a record label, it was already shutting down dance floors in New York City. BT Express.
What they like to do, whatever it is,
short for Brooklyn Trucking Express, were a Brooklyn funk collective assembled by producer Jeff Lane. Do It Till You're Satisfied was their debut single, released in late 1974 and exploding into the top 2 on the R&B chart by early 1975. The sound was raw, horn-heavy, and rhythmically irresistible, a train that simply would not stop. The story of this track's rise is a story about the power of the dance floor as a proving ground. DJ after DJ in New York played early copies of this song, and the floor reaction was immediate.
whatever it is, do it now, till you're satisfied.
Word spread. Radio picked it up. Or Of Brass Construction even lent his arranging skills to the group during their peak years, creating a Brooklyn funk scene that was as interconnected as it was prolific. But Do It Till You're Satisfied was the opening salvo, the one that made everyone stand up and ask, wait, who is this?
Everybody knows.
15. The Isley Brothers. Fight the Power. 1975. Vietnam was ending. Watergate had broken trust in government. Black America was tired.
8, 7, 6, 5.
And then the Isley Brothers handed them a soundtrack to that feeling. Fight the Power arrived in the summer of 1975 like a thunderclap. The Isley Brothers, veterans of the music industry since the early 1960s, survivors of multiple label changes and musical reinventions, delivered a 2-part, 9-minute statement that was part funk anthem, part political declaration. It hit #1 on the R&B chart, and it became arguably the defining political soul record of its era. The track was built around Ernie Isley's blazing guitar work, a figure so indelible that it inspired decades of samples and cover versions. When Public Enemy titled their landmark 1989 rallying cry, Fight the Power, yet they were explicitly invoking the Isley Brothers' original. The phrase, the concept, the urgency, it all started here. In 1975, in a recording studio where a veteran family band decided they had something to say. Fight the Power represents a specific and singular moment of artistic and political courage. A moment when commercial music became something more. When a funk band refused to just make people dance, and instead made them think, made them angry, made them proud. That moment was 1975, and it still hasn't stopped echoing. 1975, 15 songs, 15 stories that most people never fully heard. From a lullaby written for a baby named Maya, to a 6-word German disco track that outsmarted everybody, to a Brooklyn train that refused to stop, to 3 black women in space-age costumes who changed what a stage could look like. Music in 1975 wasn't just entertainment. It was survival. It was community. It was joy and protest and romance and defiance, all wrapped up in grooves that still move your body 50 years later. If any of these songs surprised you, drop it in the comments. Tell us which one you already knew. Tell us which one you're adding to your playlist right now. And if you're new here, subscribe. Because we're going year by year through the greatest chapters of R&B and soul history, and we are just getting started.